Well, we'll give you some more from here. And it is now exactly 9 o'clock. So we're starting with this incredibly powerful impact collaborative. At Your Women's Fund Miami-Dade, we say your focus is our power. And I cannot think of a more appropriate impact collaborative than this one that to really reinforce that. All of the people attending today and seeing the recording later, their focus can make a really, really big difference. So we're going to go quickly with this welcome. We thank our amazing, powerful board of directors and our three brand new board members. So excited to have your power with us and your focus with us. Thank you for all you do, you wonderful Break a Sweat board. We thank our founder, Marilyn Gladstone. We have many folks from the offices of elected officials and community partners with us in the audience today. They're the ones who really make the difference. We bring resources together and we leverage them. And nobody leverages more potently than the Carrie Meek Foundation. Congresswoman Carrie Meek has a huge legacy in her daughter, Lucia Davis Rayford, CEO of the Carrie Meek Foundation. They are our Freedom from Violence pillar sponsors, and we thank them for their work and support day in and day out. Of our 4 programs, one of them is public awareness campaigns, and this is our current campaign that we have with the Carrie Meek Foundation. Protecting our children is our responsibility, and that has everything to do with gun safety. So we thank you for your partnership, Carrie Meek Foundation. We thank you all in the audience for making sure that you take these campaigns to your folks. Usually at this time, we would have Viviana Alvarado Pacheco, excuse me, cold today, give us a moment of data and research. But Louis Greek has amazing data for us. And so we're going to go straight to you, Louis. Please give us a framework for today. Welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As mentioned, my name is Louis Greek. I'm a training specialist with Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT as we go by. And TAT has been working with the transportation industry for 15 years and finding the need to address human trafficking, specifically sex trafficking at its core. And at that core is the demand for commercial sex, the unfathomable amount of money that is made through the buying and selling of oftentimes vulnerable and marginalized human beings. You know, if individuals stop purchasing commercial sex, viewing pornography, subscribing to sex cams, then our epidemic of young boys and girls and men and women being exploited for sex would be over. And so we at TAT have created our Man-to-Man campaign and a series of resources to address the demand for commercial sex for our corporate partners, as well as the general public to help us in this fight. And so today we're going to take a look at the demand for commercial sex, the role pornography plays into it, and then who's affected by that, and then what you can do as individuals and collectively to combat this. And we'll actually go to one more slide before that. The previous slide. Perfect. And so you might be wondering, you know, we focus on the transportation industry. Why transportation and energy industry? The reality is that human trafficking is taking place in a plethora of industries, agricultural, transportation, sales, you name it. But the reality is that predominantly a lot of the roles in the transportation industry are filled by males. So this not only makes them a target for traffickers' tactics in this male-dominated industry, but it also is a place where potential toxic masculinity can play a role in spread. So that's why members of these industries, both men and women, can really be people to look up for, game changers. Because as we're working with these industries like the transportation industry, we've realized that companies are taking the initiative in addressing demand for commercial sex within their own industries. So this could mean that we have frontline workers being trained on human trafficking with our materials. It could be that a company like Pepsi or Amazon or Walmart adopts an anti-human trafficking persons policy. Or it could be legislation requiring CDL holders in your state to be trained on human trafficking. We are seeing a huge difference, but the demand for commercial sex is probably the most important part of the process. Slide. And so many of you attending today probably already know that human trafficking is the second most profitable criminal enterprise out there next to the drug trade. And whether it's that t-shirt manufacturer who thinks they can make more money by not selling their garment workers, or it's that street level pimp that's maybe running 2 or 3 girls, or maybe it's that transnational criminal organization that's running drugs, guns, and people. They're all going where that money is. That's the motivating factor for the crimes. And in the case of sex trafficking, who's paying all that money? It's the buyers. This crime really starts and stops here. Because if we were to round up all the traffickers, put them in jail, get them off the streets, we'd have a whole new set of traffickers tomorrow. Why? Because this demand for sex is unfathomable, and there's always going to be a desire and money to fuel the next trafficker. And the buyers are the ones that are actually fueling what the traffickers are selling. So probably one of the most important things to take away from today's presentation is that if there was no buyer, we'd actually have no victim. And so we are going to see how this demand plays its role in trafficking. So what is demand? Well, demand is created by both men and women, but predominantly men who seek to purchase commercial sex, whether they know that person is being trafficked or not. And commercial sex can take many different forms, as you're familiar with. It could be street-based prostitution, brothels, strip clubs, massage parlors. It also could be online. So pornography, dating apps, live sex cams. And so you have this group that wants something, that demands something, and that demand is met by criminal entrepreneurs who trick, force, and coerce those vulnerable people into meeting that demand. And in all its forms, whether it be in person or on the internet, in all its forms in regards to commercial sex, society either turns a blind eye to it, accepts it, or just doesn't really take action because they're not too sure what they're looking at. Next slide, please. And so then why do we care? Well, we care as we're having this conversation because we have an opportunity to really change this cultural mind shift into behaviors that have traditionally been accepted, that have been normalized in our culture, to realizing the harm that our behaviors and actions and words have. We care because when we can have the conversation to inform buyers, men, the community about this behavior, about our actions, and having this conversation, then I really feel that we can tackle the root of human trafficking at its cause, at its main issue. And so there's a number of individuals that obviously are exploited by this crime. I think you're going to hear from one of my colleagues here shortly about her experience. But when I say that traffickers are looking for vulnerabilities in individuals, they're looking for things like racial discrimination, undocumented, financial problems, disabilities. All those make those individuals, like many of us, somewhat vulnerable to traffickers' tactics to exploit in this crime. We also have to note that online recruitment, solicitation, and exploitation have been and will continue to grow. So the use of this technology in regards to this crime is probably another reason why it's so important that we train our corporate partners as well as community members on how to recognize and identify this crime. It's also another thing important to note is that these apps or these websites is where a lot of traffickers are looking for those vulnerabilities that I just mentioned there. They're looking for those vulnerabilities in our youth. And then on top of that, a lot of times when someone wanted to engage in commercial sex, they'd go in person to a brothel or street-based prostitution, forced prostitution. However, with the dawn of the internet, now you have websites, sex cams where you don't have to interact in person. But I can assure you that exploitation is happening on those platforms. And then another area that's very tied to this, excuse me, is the porn and pornography industry that is widespread and well accepted in our culture. And sadly, folks, human trafficking is very interconnected. There is exploitation and trafficking happening on those platforms. It's also creating some unhealthy behaviors in our society that are being normalized. Just an example right here, you have a survey of 260 domestic minor sex trafficking victims. It said 42%, so that's quite a bit, 42% were involved in online prostitution. And then the pornography consumption, along other factors, has really been shown to be an accelerator in one's intent to buy. Because again, it's normalizing thinking this type of behavior is accepted in society when it's not. So really, what is demand? Um, you know, because of that, because of the issues and the demand out there in human trafficking, TAT recognized that we need to address this demand piece at its root cause because we can't really fight human trafficking without addressing this. And so we created our man-to-man campaign and a series of resources for the industries that we work with, as well as the general public, to combat it at its root cause. So with the resources I'm going to share with you, some call to actions that you're going to hear from the panelists today, I want to share what you can do. You're probably already involved in the movement. You're already passionate about human trafficking, but how can you spread the message of demand reduction as it relates to your mission about stopping trafficking? The first thing in a part of our program is accountability of ourselves. This really goes out there to a lot of guys, but anybody. We encourage guys not to engage in purchasing commercial sex, not to go to strip clubs, not to view free or paid pornography sites, and really encourage others to do the same. We want you to surround yourself with a circle of friends that reinforce authentic masculinity and healthy messages around manhood and sex. And then maybe at your workplace or in a corporate environment, if you go back to your workplace, you're probably already telling everybody about, your interest, your desire to combat human trafficking. Further that conversation, talk about the demand aspect of it, the why behind the human trafficking. Share the resources and the call to actions that you're going to hear today. You'd be surprised how that message will actually spread at your workplace, creating a more friendly and healthier work environment to be at. And then if you're involved in a community group, faith-based group, men's group, this is a great opportunity to share that video that we keep mentioning that we'll share in the chat, but share our man-to-man campaign video. Have a discussion in one of your meetings about the demand for commercial sex. I guarantee that this message within your group will spread throughout your community and really make an impact. So just quickly, we have our addressing demand video. We're going to see a quick clip of here, and I tell you, it's a very powerful video.
We have this thing that's happening it's basically like if we have fire in a fire pit. We've all experienced that, right? We're outdoors or we're indoors and we have a fire going. That brings protection. It brings warmth. It brings a lot of things that could bring life in. And I think that in my idea is a healthy masculinity. And then we see these fires ripping and roaring through all places of the world, and they're devastating homes, they're devastating communities, they're tearing down forests. I mean, it's just destroying everything. And that to me is the idea that that's toxic masculinity. That's something that could have been good, but yet it went wrong. It came out sideways, and here we go. And it's ended up stealing and killing and destroying a lot of people and a lot of things around them through that process.
We're conditioned and programmed to think that certain things are okay, even when they're not, just because we're male. Well, boys will be boys, and girls are sugar and spice and everything nice, and guys are rough and tough, whatever that saying used to be when you were kids. But even from that time, we're conditioned to believe and to have these concepts that are wrong.
I come from a very broken home with no mother in it, with no woman in it. So basically, I was raised by wolves, men who had no idea how to love a woman, treat a woman, honor women. If anything, it was the exact opposite.
The fallout of a toxic masculinity presence was in my home when I was a kid in elementary school. I had a stepdad at the time, and he went into this space where he was ready just to destroy our family and destroy my mom. And I remember the things he would say about her to me, and I remember the things he would say to her, and he was just super verbally abusive in this stuff. And I remember as a kid not understanding manhood fully, or not understanding what does it look like for a man to be in the house or a man to be a leader, but I knew that something wasn't right in that because it was devastating to us.
So that is just a short clip of a very powerful video. I really encourage you after today's webinar sometime today to check it out on our website. In addition to that video there, we have a couple other resources. We have a wallet card, simple piece of paper that goes in pockets, purses, and hands of those out there. Just reminds you of the role demand plays in human trafficking and what you can do. In addition, we actually have a brochure that accompanies that. So these are great printed resources. They're free. So if you have community events, groups that you meet with, work with youth, community centers, information boards, we'd be happy to send you any of these free materials so you can have those on hand. And then lastly, before I kind of close out, just a couple other things. We have a anti-human trafficking persons policy that some of our corporate partners, so if you think about some of those big companies like an Amazon or a Walmart, putting an anti-trafficking persons policy into their handbook. And then a couple other resources out there. These also complement if you have a buyer diversion program. So court mandated programs for those who have been convicted of purchasing commercial sex. These resources have been excellent in complementing that program for those offenders. And then lastly, Truckers Against Trafficking launched our Youth on Transportation initiative this past year, awarded by the Department of Transportation. And this is to provide resources and information for vulnerable or youth traveling on transportation to help them identify vulnerabilities and traffickers' tactics, as well as resources for parents to have that tough conversation with youth. So I encourage you to go to our website, continue in the conversation, and you'll hear from some others, and just resources and calls to action that are available to really address and fight human trafficking at its cause with the demand reduction. I'll turn it back over to Myra.
Just to say quickly how this webinar works, this is your Impact Collaborative. Please communicate in the chat. Please communicate with your questions in the Q&A. We'll get to as many as we possibly can at the end. And please question yourself, bring the questions. Do you think that you can take something from here that is going to affect your community? I'm going to tell you that the people who are here have a lot that they can do. And so the tools that not only Louis, but especially now our panelists are going to share, you can use these and you can make a huge difference. So please also participate in the exit survey afterwards. We need this data to support our work. So please go ahead. Now I'm going to quickly go to the next amazing speaker. I'm going to ask her to introduce herself in 2 minutes or less. I know, Kelly, this is a little bit difficult, but I know you can do it. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. My name is Kelly Alsobrook. I am a training specialist and survivor leader for TAT. I was actually born and raised in Miami. I currently reside in Memphis. And out of the 6 years that I was trafficked, 4 of those years were in Miami and Broward County. So, I'm sorry, but I do have to comment on one of the comments that was made on here. Someone stated that people being prostituted or prostitution, it's the oldest profession. And I need to correct that. It is the oldest oppression of women. And so we need to change our thinking on that. It is the way we see things, and culture right now has just made this to where it is normal. We see videos, we see all of these things, but we're not looking at the real problem. And so that is why I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to share with you. And I'm excited about giving my own input as a survivor.
We could not be any more grateful for your leadership, Kelly. I look forward to learning so much from you today. Thank you so much. And on we go to our next speaker, Neil. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning. First, thank you so much for letting me share a little bit on this webinar this morning. And I'm just going to start off right away and just apologize to everybody that's on this call. It's because of men like me that we have to talk about trafficking. It's because of why we have to talk about demand and all that goes with it. That's why I'm here today, is because that's my lived experience. Um, I um, I had a 40-year addiction to pornography. Started back when I was 10 years old. It was fueled from a home that was a home that had divorced parents, and my dad was not around, and so that sort of formed who I was for most of my life. And just like any drug, that pornography led to me wanting harder and harder things to fill up this brokenness in my life, to replace the loneliness, this hole in my heart. And that led me to seeking out women to pay for sex. I did that through my first marriage, which led to a divorce, and had started down that path again in my second marriage. And I will say that I ran into someone in a hotel room in Chicago that I was paying for sex. And turns out that her partner was in the other room and had already uncovered my wife's contact information and blackmailed me, and ultimately called my wife and helped unmask all the secrets that I had been hiding. And that set me free from pornography and from purchasing sex. But it's also helped me take responsibility and accountability for my actions to rebuild my marriage, which has led me to this space, which I am grateful to have a very small voice in. But I want to help. I want to be an advocate for those for the men that are broken and are hurting and are stuck in this poison of pornography that is poisoning the brains of men today. And we need to get a hold of that, and we need to, that's how we're going to, it's not going to be easy, but that's how we can take a step at breaking the demand. So thank you for letting me be here.
Again, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your bravery. And thank you for being willing to represent so many people who are not yet speaking it. So thank you so much. And Alan, thank you again for being with us. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. It's great to be here. You guys just met Louie. Louie and I have been friends for several years now, and have been on some of these kinds of webinars and whatnot a number of times. My name is Alan Smith. I'm the executive director for an anti-trafficking agency. We just turned 14 years old. We had a little birthday party for the agency at our work with balloons and cake. Anti-human trafficking agency. We're based in Los Angeles. So that little video talking about the fire that's out of control, they were referring to, quote, toxic masculinity. We're living that out in real time right here. You've seen it on the news. It's tragic what's happening. And at Saving Innocence, we, for most of our time, well, all of our time, but most of our time has been focused on providing aftercare for survivors of trafficking. And for most of those 14 years, it's been focused on minors, on children, child victims of sex trafficking. Our youngest little client was 7 years old when we received and began to care for her. Just, it's mind-boggling what's going on out there in this space. And I say most of our time's been focused on that, and that is true. But in the last 3 years, we stepped into leadership of the LA County Regional Human Trafficking Task Force. We co-lead that task force with the Sheriff's Department. And so I'm told we're the largest task force in the country, probably just because we're Los Angeles and everything is big here. And so there's a lot of people, a lot of populations. We partner with Homeland Security and FBI and the DOJ and all those kinds of entities to help interrupt and disrupt this crime on that level. At the same time, we've got a staff of advocates and case managers on call around the clock. And so we're sort of attacking this problem from both ends. And it says right there, Louis, I think, invited me on here because he helped collaborate on a book that we partnered with a bunch of survivors and other professionals. And it's called Men Fight for Me. Just the idea that no demand, no crime, or no victim, I think is what the tagline was for Louis's talk. And so me being a man, sort of my lane has sort of become speaking into the world of men and the minds of men, because most of the buyers, as Louis stated, are men. And so if you want to attack demand, you have to go to that group. So anyway, that's why I'm here to talk about that and the bigger picture. And I'm grateful to be here. So thanks for having me.
Such powerful speakers and powerful folks in the audience who will take everything that you're telling us today and take it to larger audiences. Kelly, please tell us from your perspective, what do you think we need to know?
Well, I know for me, I had a lot of those vulnerabilities that Louis talked about. I was a young single mom. I had abuse in my childhood, sexual abuse by my father. The biggest thing is that I wanted to be loved and cared for. And so when I met my first trafficker, um, when he walked by me and said, "Hey, beautiful," I was like, whoa, nobody's called me beautiful. My dad told me every day that I was nothing, that I wouldn't amount to anything. And so looking out for the youth that are from a broken home, looking out for youth that have been through trauma already, looking out for those that may be homeless. Unfortunately, our culture has created pimping as a norm. If you listen to a lot of the songs, um, if you see what we're seeing on TV, it's getting more and more risque. And so it's becoming a norm. And so people tend to think, oh, well, she just wants to be out here. And when they hear a prostituted person say, "I'm a hoe and this is what I do," and all of this, they're being conditioned to say that. This is what they think their life is. And so, the men that are doing the purchasing, they think, oh, well, she wants this. It's actually paid rape, is what it is. And I don't think the men that are purchasing realize what's actually happening. And I don't think that they honestly care. They want what they want, and they will pay a lot of money. The more money they pay, the more sick the actual acts are. And so we need to be mindful and realize that person, nobody wakes up and says, "It's my life's dream to be prostituted." If we can realize that, and if people can, if they see someone who's being prostituted or has that demeanor, don't judge based on what you see. There is a backstory to everything. And so think about it. Who would really want to be out there? The ones that are suffering the most by the hands of traffickers and the buyers are the victims. And I don't think people realize that. I don't think they realize that those that are doing the purchasing, they inflict just as much harm, if not more, than the trafficker. Because imagine that. Imagine that we have to endure having sex 10 times, 15 times, 20 times a day with different men. So remember that before you're really quick to judge that prostituted person, because you don't know what's happening behind the scenes.
Thank you, Kelly. These are messages that you are able to share, that you were empowered by Kelly to share today by her generosity and her leadership. We are numb. We're often numb. And if these stories get shared, you will make a difference. Neil.
Yeah. So, I want to follow up kind of on what Kelly says when she talks about the buyers. And I agree in one sense that buyers don't know what the person that they're going to meet, they don't consider that if that person's being trafficked, or if they're being forced there. And let's be honest, if you're paying someone to show up to have sex with you, it's force, it's coercion, you can call it whatever you want. It's exploitation, it's trafficking. It's never okay for that. But I do, and this is why I'm here, and this is going to be probably uncomfortable for people to hear. I want to bring some awareness to what's going on inside the man who's doing this. And I can tell you that the men, not all of them, there is going to be an upper stratosphere of men who have all the money in the world and they don't care what they're doing. But for a large portion of men that are doing this, they are there because they're motivated by pain. There's something that has gone wrong, typically in their childhood. Again, whether it's through a broken home, broken relationship, something has gone wrong over here that is causing them to act out over here. The buying sex, looking at the pornography is a symptom of something that has gone wrong back here. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about pornography because to me, that is what is driving this. This is what is fueling the demand. When men watch pornography, it rewires our brain and it teaches us how to objectify women. But here's the other side of it too, because a lot of more and more women now, especially younger women, are viewing pornography. It's teaching those young women that it's okay to be objectified. It's okay for men to treat me like this. This is what I see. So obviously it's okay for me to do this. And that's why, that's why I'm going to be, part of my mission is try to keep pornography away from kids as much as we can. The other thing is that and Kelly kind of alluded on this, it's this type of mentality is encouraged by our culture. There's, a hookup culture, and there's, the things that, the messages that are on TV everywhere. This has just become, kind of shrug your shoulders and let people, live and let live. But again, I think this is all being fueled by, fueled by brokenness on both sides. And I think we have to understand, in order to get under of why the demand's happening, we have to understand what's driving the buyer to do this.
Thank you so much, Neil. Yes, it's marketed as cool and hip when it's really broken. We need to change that story. Alan, what are you seeing?
Excuse me. What am I seeing? The NASDAQ Global Financial Crime Report came out a short while ago, and they stated that global revenues of human trafficking reached $347 billion globally. $347 billion. And that report went through a list to try to sort of compare and contrast. You can add up the revenue from the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, global theatrical releases, the global music industry, US gambling. I mean, adding up all these incredible industries, you combine them, and they still aren't making as much money as the buying and selling of vulnerable people, many of them children. So the first wake-up call I want to have when I'm talking to people or when I'm on a webinar or some kind like this is the size and the scope is staggering of this business model. If we can be so crass and call it a business model, it's paid abuse. It's exploiting the vulnerable. It's torture in so many ways. Now, with a crime that big, or even if it's a legitimate business that's bringing in a lot of revenue, but especially something in the criminal realm, what comes with that is further criminal activity. It's associated with it. So in this case, what comes with it is lies and deceit and violence and growth of the industry, corruption, power, further abuse, injustice, cover up, power dynamic. We're seeing it played out in our society right now. We're in the middle of this. Some of the most famous, wealthy names in the entertainment industry are currently in jail or about to go into jail, and all this stuff is happening because of this power dynamic and this I'm above the law, I can do whatever I want because I am who I am. All of this is happening to the tune of $347 billion of revenue globally. Unbelievable. The second thing that I'm seeing, and I would like people to understand, is that our society is upside down. We need a massive reset of how we view everything, pretty much. We use people and we value things. We have it exactly backwards. We need to value people and use things. And we're teaching children, our kids from a very young age, the wrong perspective for the most part. And then the final piece that I would want people to understand, and particularly as I mentioned earlier, kind of the male audience, which I speak to a lot, is that I believe that the largest contributor to this crime, as well as many others, is fatherlessness in the home. Our society is missing. We are absent strong, healthy men in our society, leading and bringing healing instead of pain. If you understand what the problem is on whatever the problem might be, if it's something with your body, you get an MRI or a blood test, they can usually pinpoint what the problem is. If your car is making a funny noise, the mechanic can listen to it and run some tests. He can tell you what's wrong. And if you can understand what the problem is on whatever it might be you're thinking about, then you've got a great chance at coming up with a solution. Well, in the scourge of human trafficking and exploitation, and I think Kelly called it paid rape, it's very clear. We know what the problem is. While there are women involved in every part of this crime, the biggest part of the problem is undeniably men. Men are the problem. And it brings me no joy to say that. In some ways, I'm embarrassed. Most of the buyers are men. Most of the sellers are men. Men are the problem. And that's actually good news. Like, great, we're 50% there. If you know what the problem is, now you have a chance at crafting a solution. And that's a lot of what a webinar like this is all about. And this book, Men Fight For Me, that I mentioned, you can look at our little website created, fightforme.net. It's got all the information on the book. A bunch of survivors and professionals collaborated on it. What the idea is, we have to get into that male audience. If we want to be serious about solving this crime, we have to get into the male audience in greater and more intentional ways than ever before. So that's kind of the horse that I'm riding, the size and scope, the society that's upside down, and we have to talk to men in a different way, and young men in a different way, and help them understand what's happening.
Thank you for helping us do that. Kelly, teach us, what are your calls to action?
I think one of the biggest things is stop watching pornography. Pornography, which most people don't realize, is a part of human trafficking. Those women do not want to be there doing those things. That is a part of trafficking. So anytime you watch pornography, you're actually fueling the trafficking industry. Another thing is stop buying sex. Just stop. Get informed on what is really happening to women that are being purchased. Change your culture. You have the power to do that. Everyone on this call has the power to make a difference in someone else's life. Be kind. When you see someone who is out there, instead of talking down to them, ask them, hey, is there something that I can do to help you? Do you need some water? Do you need some food? Because a lot of times trafficking victims are being deprived of sleep, food, water, if they're not meeting their quota. And so acts of kindness, you would be surprised how long that goes, what it does for someone. You know, we're not used to people being nice to us. We are used to being treated like lower than dirt. So those random acts of kindness go a long way. And honestly, one of the biggest things that I am fighting for is making it a law to where first-time buyers are charged with a felony. There are a couple of states who have started implementing that. But what most people don't understand is, yes, we focused on the traffickers. We are focusing on the trafficking victims, but the buyers still go home with a slap on the wrist. And so stronger legislation and getting those laws passed, it may not deter everybody, but it's a start. I mean, you have a felony on your record. Nobody wants that. And so listen to what you're listening to. I see the comments about the music industry, and it's so true. What we see and what we hear, that's what's embedded in here.
Mm.
And so these are just a few of my calls to action. And everyone that is in this webinar, you are a change maker. So go out there and be the change that you want to see.
So powerful. Kindness and laws. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly. Hopefully we'll get to some questions soon for you as well. Neil, what can this group share out? What are your calls to action? What can we do?
Yeah, a few things. Number one, you're already doing it, right? That's educating yourself on the issue. And we got to take what's happening on this call, the discussion that's happening on this call, and take it into your communities and talk about what's happening and help people understand too that trafficking is maybe not what's depicted in movies. It's maybe not what is depicted in TV shows. Trafficking is happening through phones, and it's happening all over, and it's trafficking and exploitation. So it's helping educate people about truly what is happening to these victims today. The second thing is we've got to educate buyers. Again, I'll just speak for myself. I had no idea the person that I was seeing, whether they were being trafficked or not. I never considered if they were being exploited or not. And we need to help men understand, because buyers are everywhere. Buyer could be any man out there. Any man that's looking at pornography has the potential of being the buyer. And so we got to educate buyers and men in particular about what is happening. Legislation is a big deal, and I'm glad Kelly brought that up. And so first of all, in Florida, I applaud you for getting your age verification law in place for kids 18 and under to view pornography sites. And I don't know, obviously not being in Florida, I don't know if Pornhub has actually pulled out and turned off access in the state. I understand with VPNs and there are ways around that, but it is a start because we got to protect. There's a gentleman by the name of Russ Tuttle who does the Stop Trafficking Project, and he goes into schools and talks about the dangers of pornography and the dangers of exploitation through social media and through apps. And his motto is, stop it before it starts. You know, that's where we got to stop it. There's a new generation of kids growing up with pornography in the back pocket. We've got to prevent that. These laws are going to help. Is it going to cure everything? No, but it's got to be a starting point. For me personally, when it comes to pornography, I believe these laws are not strong enough. I believe you need to regulate pornography like you do any sort of drug. There is enough research, there's enough data out there that suggests that pornography is just as dangerous and is just as addictive as narcotics. So why are we not regulating this? And then I'd also ask that in Kansas and Missouri, the two states that I'm sitting right in Kansas City, I get exposed to both the legislative side in both states. Both states have laws that are going through the state capitals to make it a felony to purchase sex, but then also adds, and this is something new that I've started doing through Rehope, which is an organization in Kansas City that provides housing and education from victims of trafficking. They're offering a stop sexual exploitation class to men who have been arrested for soliciting prostitution, and I have the blessing to be able to ask and lead those classes going forward, which is a huge opportunity to provide education. But there's got to be, to Kelly's point, there's got to be deterrence. Most guys, if you're picked up for solicitation, you're getting a traffic ticket or the equivalent of a traffic ticket. There's no ramifications. Make it a felony. And I'm testifying in Kansas and Missouri on these laws. I encourage you to take a look at it if you haven't already in Florida.
Thank you so much, Neil. Alan, what are your calls to action? What can we do?
Calls to action. If men are the biggest part of the problem, which they are, that makes men the biggest part of the solution. So let's now act as if we understand that and believe that as a society, as a group, as a church, as a family, as a whoever, whatever group you're in. Let's now lay awake at night thinking about how do we impact young men, boys, that likely are many of are fatherless or coming out of an abusive home. What can we do to build them up rather than let them continue to be torn down? And let's go to those vulnerable populations where most of the future buyers and most of the future sellers are existing. We know where a lot of those are. Let's be a positive presence in those societies. And when someone asks me, what can we do? I never want to answer it too quickly. I say, I don't know. What can you do? Do that. And so do the thing which you already know. You don't have to go get a college education or degree on human trafficking. I'm not even sure you can do that anywhere particularly specifically. Do what it is that you do and put a little bit of that towards this fight. Start there. Start with baby steps. Find the human trafficking agency that's near you and ask them what they need, and then start meeting some needs. Put your big toe in the water and do something, and then practically savinginnocence.org, where I work and where I lead. Go to that website, poke around, go to our YouTube channels. A number of helpful videos, just like the Truckers Against Trafficking. There's a lot of videos and things and educational processes. And then I mentioned this before, and I can say it unapologetically because I'm just a small part of this book. There's website fightforme.net. There's resources there. There's a bunch of amazing survivors and other professionals offering their perspectives. And so the proceeds are benefiting survivors of trafficking. So I can say this, buy the book. It's also an audio version with all the real voices in it, and give it to every man that you know. Whatever few bucks come out of that will benefit trafficking survivors. But more important than that, it's a truly one-of-a-kind publication that's speaking to the hearts of men. So those are my calls to action. Pick something in there, lay awake at night and think about what can I do, and then go do it. And it all adds up. It'll be worthwhile.
Fantastic. Now for the Q&A, we're going to invite Louis to join us again. I'm going to ask our team to also, the Christie House team, to post here the link to the resources about online safety and digital safety. There are amazing leaders here and organizations that work directly with trafficking. Please, you're of course welcome to post here and share the resources that you have as well. So the first question for the panel, from an amazing leader, Kat, thank you for your question. People with disabilities are 3 times as likely to experience abuse. Do you help this population? Who would like to take this?
I'd be happy to answer that from the perspective of TAT. So we don't necessarily work directly with those populations, but we work to provide training and resources for those that actually provide transportation or care for those particular populations. So for instance, if it has a transportation niche, so like school bus drivers, oftentimes they're neglected in regards to receiving human trafficking training and identifying particular red flags. And those school bus drivers oftentimes are dealing with children or youth with disabilities. And so just providing resources, information, training that we do through our programs here at TAT, do we provide those for those that are kind of caring for those with disabilities. And so not directly, but we want to encompass those that are often sometimes, especially in the school systems, forgotten about. So at least from that perspective, from our organization, that's where we try to include those populations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next question is, how do you plan to keep pornography from children, or how can we? Who would like to take that one first?
Well, I'll start with an answer, which is obviously we talked about legislative side and trying to make it harder for kids to access this kind of material on the internet. But I'd also say, and this kind of goes back to what Alan says, you want to stop kids from using pornography, then stop dads from using pornography, and have dads help dads have that conversation with their kids, and parents help them have those conversations with their kids. I think that's where there are just too many instances where we're, not to put it all on men, but where because there's single moms do a great job of raising, but there's something about a dad talking to his son about this that is missing in today's culture. And to me, that's where one of the places it's got to start. It's got to start in the home, and the dad's got to role model that.
I have to agree with you on that, Neil, because growing up, my dad had a library full of pornography. And so whenever he was sexually abusing me, he was using pornography at the same time. And so, yes, we do need to talk to our kids. Um, we do need to bring that awareness. Um, and so I have to agree with you on that one.
And can I just, Mario, just add this, is that when I speak with men, I help them understand that when they're looking at pornography, we know this, that most of the people on the screen don't want to be there. They're somehow coerced or manipulated, or in some cases outright trafficked into that motel room or that movie set. And the problem is there's no banner, there's no button on a pornography that says this person is here consensually and they're over the age of 18. There's no way of knowing that. And we know that a lot of them aren't there consensually, and a lot of them are under 18. And so I just look at guys, I say, guys, can you even look at that even one more time? Knowing that you're receiving some kind of gratification or servicing some kind of an addiction by watching somebody get raped. Can we be real here in this webinar? They're literally being raped. They don't want to be there. It's non-consensual. And now we're somehow getting something that's helping us, or, whatever, however you want to say that. Guys, we got to be better than this. You can't look at it even one more time. I know that I want to oversimplify it. I know there's a lot of complex things that are happening there. Most of the people don't want to be there. Turn it off.
Thank you. Next question. I think this is for you, Alan. Where can I pull the data that shows the growth when it comes to the $347 billion industry? Can you share that?
That came from the NASDAQ Global Financial Report, and I'm sure you can find it online, but they put that out. So wherever that exists, that's the report that it came from.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Next question. What are the telltale signs of girls being trafficked so our antenna are up to be part of the solution? Excellent question. This can go for everyone.
I can start. If you see someone who will not look you in the eyes, if you see someone who has bruising, if you are seeing if they don't have their own identification, like if you say, hey, where's your ID? And they don't have it. Also malnutrition. Even if you see women, because people talk about the escort service being, a choice. Well, escorts are also being trafficked. And so there's not one pinpointed thing. It's going to be a multitude. Um, if you see that there's a young girl out there, or a young girl coming to a truck, or a young girl going to a hotel room, and you see an older man that she's with, that she's going to see, that's a pretty good telltale sign. Also, for law enforcement, that may be on here. If you pull a car over and you see someone, you see a trafficking victim, a possible trafficking victim who she might have one of two reactions. She might say, no, that was mine. That's mine. Say you find weed or a gun or whatever the case may be. Oh, no, that's mine. That's mine. Nobody's ever going to say that, but she's protecting the trafficker. I mean, there are so many indicators, and we have a plethora of information on indicators on our website at tatnonprofit.org. We have videos, we have wallet cards. There's just a plethora of information on there. But most of the time we're not even seen. We're overlooked. And so now that you're aware, now do something.
I'll just briefly add that. And first of all, I just want to right here publicly thank Kelly and Neil for being here. Your perspectives are invaluable. We can't have these kinds of conversations without your input. So thank you for that. And just, I don't know if I heard you say this, Kelly, but a lot of these trafficked victims will get branded in the form of a tattoo in a visible place, sometimes even on their face, certainly on their neck and other places. And it usually resembles some version, some nickname or call sign of their trafficker. They're identifying, I own you. They're signifying ownership of their property. And so it's sometimes has with money and dollar signs and those kinds of things. And so a lot of people have tattoos that have nothing to do with being trafficked, but you can kind of see where they are and what they look like. And that might give you an indication that's it's possibly happening. Not necessarily, but possibly.
And I'll add to that I just posted in the chat. We have some really powerful resources, including social media cards that show the signs, where to call, what to do. You can always call 911 as well if you don't know where else to call. And you can always say, I'm not certain, but I think this is what I'm seeing. You don't need to go in with your cape on and go in and intervene. People would rather know. The state attorney, the U.S. attorney consistently say, it's much better if you suspect something to go ahead and let us know. It might be fine and nobody's going to get hurt. It might be slightly embarrassing for somebody, but probably not even that. It's more likely a kindness and somebody being seen. I will, ask Kelly if you want to affirm this or not, but I've learned from so many other leaders that for many years, in fact, being years out of being trafficked until they were truly survivors, didn't identify as being trafficked. Was that your experience as well?
Well, here's the thing is that we don't know that we're victims. I didn't know that I had been a victim of human trafficking for almost 20 years. And so I carried that guilt and shame with me for a very long time. And so, no, they're not going to say, oh, I'm being trafficked. No, they think they made that choice to be there. And that's what I thought for so many years. And so, yeah, that's really important for everyone to know.
That's a powerful, powerful tying up to this incredible session. Your focus is our power, darkness, and not shining the light, not focusing on this issue allows it to absolutely thrive. And there are huge marketing forces behind it. That 7-year-old who Alan's team was working with deserves that everybody here get their adrenaline back up, that you get your sense of responsibility back on. And that responsibility really isn't so much just to you, but it's for you to go out to your networks. Because if there's any way that we can thank Louie, Kelly, Neil, and Alan for being with us today, it's by damn well doing something about it. Okay? This is every day, every day. There's always something that we can do. So what other things can we do? We can keep in touch, so we keep focused. We keep on learning the latest. You can join the Women's Fund. I saw somebody wanted to connect with us on human trafficking stuff. Please do reach out. We are also part of coalitions. We ask everybody to join the coalitions if you want. You can join these impact collaboratives. Thanks for your support. We can't do the work without you, whether you donate time, talent, or treasure. And if you continue to be a part of this community, there's always going to be something that you learn about what you can know and what you can do to support women and girls. Most of these topics are interdigitated. So when we look at a gendered focus on gun violence in Miami-Dade, you darn bet you, it's also affecting victims and survivors of human trafficking, because none of these things are standalone. So please join us on February 6th as well. Surveys and data matter, because that's the way that together we influence policy. That's how we influence laws. That's how we influence donors to invest in our work. So thank you for doing the survey as well. And a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of our collective Women's Fund hearts to all of our panelists and presenters, and you in the audience who do so much brilliant work. I know you, I see you all day here, every day in our community. This makes a start to a happy new year, an empowered new year to you all.